Yeah, let me try and demystify or decode Honorable Elias Lukwago's failure. His failure did not come because he's weak or unintelligent or even irrelevant. He lost because the political terrain shifted beneath his feet, while his core strength actually remained largely unchanged. And when you analyze that, then you understand that Lukwago's loss was actually structural, not even personal. Lukwago, obviously, as we all know, he is a constitutionalist and not a populist. So elections today, especially in urban areas, are increasingly driven by party machinery, by mobilization networks, and by youth identity politics, and also emotions and symbolism, and of course momentum in terms of that. So Lukwago's politics, on the other hand, is actually built on legal reasoning, on institutional memory, on procedural correctness, and also on moral authority, which things may not actually augur so well in terms of the political dispensation that we may have, especially in urban political areas. So these qualities do not necessarily translate into mass electoral energy, especially in wide dominated environments. He was actually swimming, if you like, against political tides and not competing on equal waters. And that is something you must understand in terms of decoding his loss. He was also outpaced by the movement logic in terms of contemporary politics of today. When you argue in terms of recent Ugandan elections, for example, particularly in Kampala or even urban areas, Kampala, Jinja, and the likes, they are no longer about individual merit, but about things to do with party colors, things to do with collective anger, things to do with protest voting. You know, you've had that argument of protest vote. And then it's no longer a question of we, it's a question of we versus them. You know, it's a question of we versus them in terms of the framing. So that becomes extremely important. So Lukwago ran as a man of conscience and continuity in a season that actually rewarded rupture and even rebellion. In simple terms, he actually offered governance when the electorate actually wanted resistance. And this is something you must contextualize in terms of decoding the Honorable Elias Lukwago's loss in terms of the just concluded mayor elections in Kampala. This mismatch obviously matters in terms of the political dynamics of this country. His greatest strength obviously became an electoral weakness. Lukwago is what you can argue as too principled to posture. He is actually too legally disciplined to inflame crowds. And you could also argue in terms of too institutional to play reckless politics. So ironically, this made him actually appear as an older order, if you like, in terms of a spent force, and insufficiently radical, if you argue in terms of that context. He was actually probably argued to be less emotionally resonant with the generation that raised on immediacy in terms of what was happening today in terms of the politics of this country. So none of these are actually leadership failures. They're actually electoral disadvantages in a populist movement. So you must understand when you're trying to decode the failure of my esteemed brother, the Honorable Lukwago. The Kampala voter was actually voting against, many institutionalized rebellion sorts of issues. So that's where the debate lies. In terms of the protest votes, in terms of party line votes, in terms of emotionally driven votes, and in such elections, then your track records would not matter anymore. People won't look at track records. They won't even look at integrity in terms of whether integrity matters. They won't even look in terms of institutional memory. Those don't matter in terms of this. This what tsunami, if you like. So Lukwago represented experience and restraint, and these two rarely are rewarded when it comes to protest cycles. So you must understand that in terms of the debate that we're having tonight, in terms of decoding the Honorable Elias Lukwago's unfortunate event. So what Lukwago is actually best suited for, if you like, you could argue that he is not built for perpetual electoral combat. He is actually built for national institutional stewardship. He is a true calling in terms of certain things that to do with constitutionalism, in terms of he understands the constitution as a lived reality, not even in terms of theory only. So he has actually fought, for example, the state and even understands its excesses. He commands respect across what political divides. And you could argue him as a chief constitutional advisor in terms of a national ombudsman of sorts. He's a defender of legality. He's a guardian of institutional restraint. And he's a voice of reason in moments of state overreach, for example. And these are things that we not augur so well with what the revolution, with the tsunami that is taking place in terms of the urban areas. He's a senior statesman for all intents and purposes. He's post-partisan. You could argue in terms of his thinking of the likes of Mandela, like after prison, not Mandela the rebel. He's a unifier. Not so much of a mobilizer. He's a conscious of the republic, if you like. So Uganda, you could argue that is desperately short of men who understand law as a moral architecture. And my friend, the Honorable ELIAS LUKWAGO, is actually one of them. In terms of a takeaway, in terms of without calling a spade and not sugarcoating anything, LUKWAGO lost the election because he has not lost relevancy. What failed was actually electoral translation and not leadership substance. And that is something you must take away, if you like. And that is food for thought. Thank you for your attention, and God bless you.